All right, everybody, let's get started. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the North Carolina Museum of Natural Sciences. My name is Chris. I'm curator for the Daily Planet Theater, and I'm your host every week for the Lunchtime Discovery presentation series here inside the Daily Planet. I'm so glad you're all out here visiting with us today. We've got a great show. This is actually the first Lunchtime Discovery presentation of the new year. So, Happy New Year, everybody. Hope that it finds you well. Again, we're so glad that you're all here. Lunchtime Discovery presentations happen every Wednesday at noon here inside the globe, inside the Science Museum. But they are a partnership between us here in the museum and the North Carolina Office of Environmental Education. That does a great job of pulling the speakers together, and then here at the museum, we've got a great space and venue that we can offer to put these topics on blast, right? To put them up on the big screen and give our fabulous presenters a big stage to share their passion with us. And today's guest, of course, is going to do that very same thing. Colleen Bocan is the assistant park manager at Lake Crabtree County Park, but you knew that because you read it on the screen behind me. And we had Colleen here at the museum give a presentation about birding and wildlife here in North Carolina not too long ago at one of our Thursday night science cafes. It was fabulous. It was wonderful. People laughed. People cried. They had great, okay, maybe they didn't cry. But we had a great discussion about wildlife as well, so I think we're going to do the same thing for today's program as well. But before Colleen comes up, I want to let everybody know, keep an eye out for these posters around the museum and around some of the other buildings here downtown. We've got some great topics coming up for the Lunchtime Discovery series for the rest of this year. The next several weeks are all planned out. Make sure that you check out the website for the Office of Environmental Education or Museum of Natural Sciences at naturalsciences.org to see the upcoming schedule, because we're going to be traveling to galaxies and then to places all over North Carolina. We're going to cover some really interesting and exciting topics in this year related to STEM and science and nature. So, without further ado, put your hands together and welcome to the stage, Colleen Bocan.
Thank you. All right, where are my bird watchers at? Oh yeah, got to make sure I find my people. There's a great collection of videos on YouTube called True Facts. They're more adult-oriented, so I wouldn't share them with kids. There are quite a few owls worldwide, about 20 species in North America, but we are only going to talk about 5 or 6 today, 4 of whom are pretty regular to our area and most of North Carolina, and then a couple of special visitors or ones you can find on vacation if you go to the mountains. So we're going to start with one that fits into one of my favorite categories of birds, which is cute and deadly. This is the eastern screech owl. It is our smallest local owl. It is known for 2 different calls, because even us bird watchers know you can spend days and weeks and years looking for owls, thinking you're going to find owls everywhere. And even when you do come across an owl, you're more likely to hear it than ever see it. And trust me, I've tried to find a bunch of owls. When I hear them, it's still not that easy. So it's good to learn the calls of these owls and not just what they look like. So the first one is known as their whinny call. There's the whinny. Hope it was all you were waiting for. Okay, so that's the whinny of an eastern screech owl. Hopefully that is the last of our technical difficulties as well. But it's also known for a second call called the trill. A couple people just shuddered. Yeah, it's one of those like creepy horror movie kind of sounds, although there's way better ones. Trust me, they're coming. So again, those are the 2 different calls that the eastern screech owl is known for. And as I mentioned, 3 color morphs, but this gray one is the one we're most likely to see here in the southeast. But it's not unusual to see the red morph. Sometimes I like to travel down here on vacation. Okay, so as I mentioned, the eastern screech owl is our smallest owl. So I'm not going to read off all the measurements because it's right up there. And in the bird world, you usually try to categorize things. So you say it's about the size of a crow or about the size of this. So in birder terms, it's about the size of a robin. So, you don't think it's going to intimidate too many things, but it actually has quite a variety of prey that it deals with, which we'll see in a moment. As a hunter, they typically sit up on a perch. They do prefer a habitat which is sort of an open understory woodland area. So you are going to find them in areas with a pretty good amount of unbroken forest. But they tend to be kind of cosmopolitan compared to the bigger owls. So these are the ones that might actually visit your bird bath at night when you're not paying attention. And they have been known to skim some birds off from feeders because, if it's rough out in the woods, free food at the feeder. Who's not going to take advantage of that? So you can find them in parks and even some suburbs and more urban areas. This is one owl that is actually found in Central Park, of all places. They were reintroduced there, so again, they can live in New York City. So even though they prefer understory and open woods, they can adapt pretty well. All right, so it's not changing back there, but up here. Okay. So as I mentioned, we have the different morphs. So here is the red morph sitting next to the gray morph. So again, same owl, but very different appearance. Some people might think, oh, it's a male and a female or something like that, but this is truly color morphs. And then here we have that brown morph that lives only in Florida. And we are not likely to see that one here. I don't know of any records that I've heard from other birders of the brown morph being sighted, but I know folks have seen that red morph in this area. So you can see on their range map where they are located. So they have a pretty wide range throughout the United States and into Canada and Mexico and Central America a little bit. Sometimes they'll kind of drift down into Central America and the Caribbean, but for the most part, they're sort of eastern U.S. specific, and they do not migrate. So in this range, they're going to be year-round in their established territories. So here's a little menu for them, a variety. So they are one of the most diverse dieted owls, especially for the small ones. A couple of things of particular note are in the upper right corner, we have a bat. If you know anything about bats, it's pretty impressive that anything can catch them and eat them. So these tend to be very agile owls. And then center at the top, they can be cannibalistic if they so choose. So again, small, but kind of scary. But for the most part, these guys prefer small rodents and small birds. But since they are mostly hunting in the middle of the night or near dawn or dusk, they're more likely to get more mammals than anything else. But again, earthworms, lizards, crayfish, any other little creepy crawlies they can come across. So for nesting and breeding, they do not clean or add to their nests. So a lot of our local songbirds are very fastidious nest builders, and they'll take the fecal sacs out, keep things nice and tidy. Owls are kind of lazy when it comes to nesting. They don't like to build nests, and they don't like to maintain nests. So the kids just sort of deal with what they got. So again, most of the time they're using existing cavities. They have an advantage being so small that a lot of times they can use pileated woodpecker cavities that have already been used and left behind. Probably they could battle the woodpecker for the cavity, and they're going to win. And then, of course, people do put out owl boxes, and this is a species that a lot of folks do specifically put owl boxes out for. So we have a couple out at our park, and then places like Harris Lake County Park, they have screech owls actively nesting in boxes that they built and monitored. So again, this is one of those easier owls to catch if you're out looking, because you might actually get to see them in their nesting box. They only do one brood a year, which is pretty true for most of our owls. And then again, you have your incubation period and nestling period. So you've got a couple of months of really hard work, sitting on eggs and raising the babies, keeping them fed. Both parents will feed with the screech owls, but the mom is the one that tears it into little pieces for the babies to eat. And we didn't get to watch the video, so with owls, there's no chewing. There's either swallowing whole or tearing into big chunks and swallowing. And then, of course, they regurgitate a pellet. A lot of times when I talk to kids and I show them an owl pellet, I was like, what is this? And usually I get a lot of poop. Like, no, it's barf. Totally different. but poop and barf are both equally fun to talk about, so, opens up the conversation. So they have two-part stomachs, owls do, and part of that is actually to digest the digestible parts, and all of the fur and feathers and bones sort of get pushed together into a neat little package that will slide out really easy. And I think you heard in the video, that's why it's polite to barf at a owl dinner party. So in addition to their wonderful hunting techniques, again, they're usually sitting up on a perch and then they drop down, scoop things up and bring it back to a perch. They have awesome predator evasion techniques because when you're little, there are things that are going to want to kill you. So these are their two options. If you are smaller than a screech owl, you get the puffed up, I'm big and scary, grrr technique. And I guess it usually works. And then if you're bigger than the screech owl, you get the I'm a stick routine. So he's not a really good stick right there because his eyes are open, but when they're really threatened, they will actually squint their eyes and they'll sit really straight up and they'll even sway in the breeze with the rest of the branch. It's like nothing to see here, I'm just a stick. So pretty cool stuff for a little owl. All right. So here is our owl number 2. We're going to get slightly bigger as we go up the owl chain. So barn owl. This is a common barn owl. There are many, many species of barn owl worldwide. It's the most widespread of owls, and it's found pretty much throughout the world. We'll see their range in a moment. Let me make sure I get my number correct. So there are 18 species worldwide, but about 30 subspecies within those species. So there's a lot of barn owls around the world. But this is ours. This is the only one you're going to find in North America, the common barn owl. And it does kind of drift down into Central America, but there's a second barn owl that kind of shares Central America with it. A lot of people consider this our prettiest owl. And does anybody want to guess if that is a male or a female? Because this is actually one of the sexually dimorphic owls. Yes, what do you think? You got a 50-50 shot. No pressure. I know you meant to say female. It's okay. So yes, so this is a female. So if you see a barn owl with these cute little spots across its chest and throat, and also they'll have spots across the top of their head, those are the females. Males will be completely spotless. They might have a few that sneak in, kind of like freckles, but for the most part, when you see a barn owl, you can actually tell if it's a male or a female, whether it's spotted or not. So the ladies have the extra, bling or whatever you want to call it. And it's not just for show. So in addition to the fact that studies have shown that females with more spots are more attractive to male barn owls, true story, it's also a way to keep parasites off of them. So studies have also shown that the more spots a female barn owl had, the less parasites they had. So, it looks good and it serves a purpose, so right on. So here is the lovely call of the barn owl. The soothing sounds of nature. So yeah, this is the thing where if you're hiking at night or you're camping and you hear that in the woods, you might pack up and go home. But it's just a barn owl. Okay, so as far as ID goes, these guys are pretty easy compared to other owls and raptors. There's really nothing you're going to mistake it for. In addition to that pretty speckling or no speckling kind of white chest, they're very cinnamon and gray above the top and back. And again, very light underneath. They also have that heart-shaped face, which is pretty unusual compared to other owls. So again, doing our size comparison, we have moved on up. We are no longer the size of a robin, but we're about the size of a crow. And a lot of people always find this hard to believe that they're really just the size of a crow. But a lot of owls is like all that feathers, they're kind of puffed up all the time. They can be a little stocky, but when you really get past all those feathers, there's really not much to them. So technically, they're about the size of a crow. A couple of measurements for you there. Something interesting, kind of seeing that picture of the barn owl in flight, this is one of the owls where the males really do some work to impress the ladies. They have something called a moth flight. So during breeding, the males will grab a piece of prey and kind of hover with their wings open and sort of show off to ladies like, look at this, I can dance and I can also provide food, so you should pick me. I think us human ladies need to make our males work harder. Just saying. Here's that worldwide distribution of the barn owl. So again, this is many, many species around the world. Of course, we're represented with our common barn owl there in North America. But you'll notice the only places that you don't find them are in deserts and polar regions. Everywhere else, as long as you have an open area, you can have barn owls in that spot. So that does cover the majority of the world. And we're going to see another owl a little later that's basically the reverse of this. Let's see if you can figure out which one that is. And here is the North American range of the common barn owl. So again, pretty common in the southeast. We have a pretty stable population here. I don't know if some of you might have heard that barn owl populations are in trouble, and some folks are doing studies. They're providing barn owl boxes for them. Here in North Carolina and in the southeast in general, they're sort of at a stable rate. But in my home state of Connecticut and some other states, especially in the northeast and sort of Midwest, sort of the northern part, they are either listed as endangered or species of special concern from state to state. So in different localities, because of habitat loss and other changes, they have significantly reduced their populations. So sort of as a whole, they're stable, but based on your location, they might actually be in very low numbers compared to what they used to be. Super cute picture of a baby barn owl. So unlike some of our other owls, they actually will not just use cavities, but they do things like cliff ledges. And again, barn owls are known and they're named barn owl because they nest in barns and other man-made structures. So again, if you have like a building on your property that's kind of falling apart, an old shed, something like that, it might be a great place for a barn owl to nest. Unfortunately, one of the bad things that comes with being so connected to human buildings and humans in general is they tend to eat a lot of rodents that may be laced with poison because we're trying to kill off our rodents, and then we inadvertently kill off our owls and other raptors. So there was a study, I believe it was in Kansas, and they did just a study on dead owls of different reasons. They weren't killed right out by poison, but they found that 91% of those owls in the study had some level of rat poison in their system. So in some cases, it might have killed the owls. In other cases, it may have just been sort of a long-term issue. It may have caused, neurological problems. Maybe they just didn't feel good all the time. So it may have had some impact on them. It's just hard to say for sure. So we always tell people, if you love owls and raptors, don't put out poison, have a heart traps some other way, but nothing that's going to impact those predators as well. Something else interesting to point out is this goofy picture of all these babies. Kind of reminds me of some of the characters from The Dark Crystal, those of you that remember that movie. But you'll notice they're all different sizes, but that's one brood. So like a lot of larger birds, owls will actually lay their eggs over a period of several days, perhaps. And as a result, those eggs hatch over the period of several days. So you sort of have the oldest sibling kind of in the middle, standing up, looking tough, all the way down to probably the newest babies whose heads are still flopping over. They're looking kind of pathetic. So those, are all siblings. They're just all a few days apart. And again, that picture up at the top kind of shows them in that human structure. They're a little more specific on what they like to eat compared to some of the other owls. So again, they're mainly going to stay with rodents. They do go to rabbits and occasional birds. I put the starling specifically because that's a bird I don't mind them eating because it's an invasive species. And however we can get rid of them, it's a good thing. So go barn owls. But again, voles, mice, moles, any other little thing they can find. But again, that's probably another reason why they're more greatly impacted by rat poison, because they're really kind of specializing. All right, moving on. So this is the owl that you are probably most likely to see if you are out and about birding or hiking or whatever you might be doing in the woods. This is our barred owl. And a lot of times people might get confused between them and the great horned owl, which we're going to talk about next. But the great thing is if you ever see the owl facing you, look at the streaks on its chest and belly. If it's up and down, so if it's vertical, you've got a barred owl. If it's horizontal, it's a great horned owl. So I always think horizontal horned, like two H's, it's easy to remember that way. And then we also have the two different calls. So does anybody know what barred owls say? Don't be shy. I heard it. Who cooks for you? Yes, very good. So we have a couple of different calls we're going to listen to. One is sort of their general hooting, then the who cooks for you all, and then my personal favorite. So, that's just like, I'm waking up, letting everybody know this is my spot. Here's the one we all know. And you might have heard one kind of calling back in the distance. So again, owls call for much the same reason that all birds call, to either establish their territory and let people know they're not welcome, communicate back and forth with their mate, or actually communicate back and forth with their babies. Because sometimes once the babies have fledged and left the nest, they sort of have to keep track of them as they're wandering around on their own. And this is my personal favorite, so sometimes you get a male and a female that are just really excited to see each other. And this is what you end up getting. So that's called the monkey call. True story. All right, so here's our barred owl. So again, we're getting bigger. This is between a crow and a goose, which is a pretty wide range, but you kind of get the picture. So again, in the front, you can kind of see on that one landing, like nice vertical bars, very much across the breast. And then on the back, you have the horizontal barring, but for the most part, brown and white, brown and white, brown and white. Facial disc is lighter, kind of almost looks like that same effect you get with the barn owl, but it doesn't quite have that heart shape. And again, looking at the measurements, you can kind of get an idea of how long they are, their wingspan, and about how much they weigh. Much like the screech owl, their preferred hunting technique is to sit up on a perch somewhere. Their habitat is a little bit different. They prefer sort of secondary growth forests, but they really like things near water. So you're much more likely to find them in a forest where there's a stream or maybe a swampland. We have a forested wetland at our park, so that would probably be the best place to look for them. They like the water. Here's the North American range of the barred owl. So again, pretty much all throughout the southeast, going all the way up through New England, and then a really interesting little spike going across. I know they're probably found out there in Washington because they've got those really great forests, pretty unbroken national parks out there, and a little bit down into Mexico. So like the screech owl, much more varied in its diet. So this is not everything they eat, but just a little bit of a representation of some of the categories. So again, everything from crayfish to rabbits to toads, pretty much anything they can catch, they're going to eat. And because they're a larger owl, they don't really have to worry too much. Although I will say, they do have to worry about our next owl, the great horned owl, which is actually the #1 predator of barred owls. So apparently owls don't mix well together. So nesting and breeding, very much similar to the screech owl. So looking for cavities, of course, they're going to require larger cavities. So again, this is why they're looking for maybe even older growth forests so that they have large trees. So they can be sort of primary or secondary growth forests. Probably more naturally occurring cavities because again, they're lazy, they're not going to excavate, they're going to look for something that's there. Sometimes they might use platforms, so folks build platforms for things like ospreys and other animals, and they might take one of those over if it's in a protected area. And from a hunting technique, again, they're sitting up on a perch, sort of waiting for their prey to come down below. And here's what the babies sound like when they want food. So yeah, that must be fun first thing in the morning, huh? Interesting little fun fact about barred owls. In some areas, they eat so many crayfish that their belly feathers actually turn pink. So if you find a barred owl with a really pink belly, you know what they've been up to. And then I wanted to show a little close-up. So part of the video mentioned the fact that owls have silent flight. So compared to daytime raptors like hawks, They're not very fast. If you put an owl up against a peregrine falcon or even something like a Cooper's hawk, they're never going to win the race, but they have stealth on their side. So they're a little bit bulkier, their wings are much broader, but that's because it gives them more lift because they're usually a heavier bird. And they have these specialized projections on their feathers that sort of acts as something that kind of makes the wind disperse. And so you're not hearing that flapping like you do with a lot of other birds when they take off. They have truly just about completely silent flight. And their feathers in general, if you've ever held an owl feather, they're very velvety and soft compared to other birds' feathers. And again, it's almost like having like a nice soft blanket, and it sort of dims out all that noise. All right, so here's our great horned owl. Typically, when an animal is called great or greater or king something, you kind of get the hint that they're probably like top of that group. This is pretty much the true for our great horned owl, because in this area, this is the owl that's going to be preying on other owls. So like I said, #1 predator of the barred owl will certainly eat a screech owl, barn owl, anything else it can catch. They don't always look this surprised. But they have a unique call as well. So remember, barred owl says, "Who cooks for you? Who cooks for you all?" The great horned owl, our little saying for them is, "Who's awake? Me too." So tell me if you hear that in this call. So they're either getting excited because that's a male and a female, or a territory dispute is about to go down. But again, who's awake? Me too. It's an easy way to remember that one. All right, so again, between a crow and a goose, but slightly larger than a barred owl. Again, you can look at those measurements. Love the little baby to the left on that bottom picture. The video mentions that they look like cotton balls that grew legs and a face. And then also they disguise themselves as Muppets. I think that's pretty accurate. That's usually the look you get from a great horned owl. They usually don't look surprised like that first picture. They usually look kind of ticked off when you see them. And it's just sort of because the shape of their face and the way the feathers lie, it just sort of gives them that kind of scowly look, like they're pushing their eyebrows together and they're not very happy with you. So here's the range of the great horned owl. Pretty much covers all of North America. Again, not migratory. So just like the barred owl and the screech, they tend to sort of set up a territory and stay there year-round because they're eating so many different things. And especially in this part of the world, in the southeast, things are going to be active all year round, so they always have a source of food. The great horned owl, when I did research for this presentation, it sort of stole my heart a little bit because I'm a big horror movie buff, and it has a really specific way of killing its prey, which I can kind of appreciate. It likes beheading things. So sometimes you'll be walking in the woods and you'll just find like a rabbit head, but no rabbit. Or you might find some legs from a bird and nothing else. And that's because a great horned owl just had its dinner. So what they do, because they do tend to grab bigger prey than other owls, they will take the head off and sometimes rip wings, legs, whatever is hanging around to make it more portable so they can transport it back to their roost to eat, or when they're carrying food back to their babies. But it's pretty gruesome. And what's funny is I had a teenager volunteering with me yesterday, and she mentioned, I was going on a hike with my family one day. I think they were geocaching. She's like, and it was really weird because we just found this head of a rabbit, and that was it. Like, oh, you had a great horned owl somewhere nearby. So again, here is its wide variety of food. I'm going to point out a couple specifics. So skunk. Again, birds generally don't have a sense of smell, so they don't care if they eat a skunk. Bats, so again, even though it's a larger owl, still pretty agile. There's our cute little screech owl looking nervous. And as a birder, I tend to have an issue with outdoor cats, so it kind of makes me smile a little bit inside that every once in a while they might get a kitty. I know there's probably some cat lovers in the audience, and I'm really sorry, but that's just how it is. It's not one of their main food sources, but occasionally they may actually take a cat or a small dog. And I think a while back, there was some concern about hawks taking small dogs from yards. I still kind of wonder if that ever actually happened. But apparently you do have to worry about the owls, so don't let your pets kind of hang out outside at night by themselves, because you might not see them again. So nesting and breeding, again, cavities, but they will also occasionally use man-made structures. So this could be platforms or buildings, but very unusual for that. Mainly, they're still going to be looking for cavities. They actually do a little bit of work, so they'll line the nest with their feathers or other soft material to at least give something to the babies. But again, they're not going to do a whole lot of work other than just keeping those little buggers fed, which is enough work in itself. So here's what these babies sound like when they're hungry. Kind of the same as those little bluebirds you get in your box, you know? Beep, 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 beep. So close. So in addition to being the most feared owl from a prey standpoint, they're actually just kind of grumpy in general. So they tend to be super territorial compared to other owls. So they sort of look for a reason to pick a fight. And they have lots of different things they do to let you know that they're not happy with you. So usually it starts with that top left corner, and they do this little beak clicking thing. So they just sort of clap their beak, you know, like back off. This is like your first warning. And then it starts to kind of develop into the picture down and to the right of the hissing. And again, just looks ticked off in both of those pictures. Then they go into the I'm really big, you should be terrified of me routine. And then if that doesn't work, they just come straight at you with their talons, and you don't want that. So they give you fair warning, and then this is the sound they make when they're grumpy. It's not quite as intimidating as I wanted it to be. So the bottom picture is going to lead into my next slide. That is not photoshopped. This is a behavior called mobbing. You see it a lot with all kinds of raptors. This is when a whole bunch of little birds, or just one really spunky little bird, decide to beat up on the local predator because their babies are nearby and they are not okay with a big bad hawk or owl wanting to eat their babies. So you get this sort of situation. Love the picture on the upper right because he just looks so over this robin, it's not even funny. But in general, you actually see crows mobbing owls and hawks more than any other bird. They happen to be one of my favorites. I'm a big fan of the corvids. And again, they have a lot of attitude as well. So when these two get together, it's not going to go well. So what happens is one of the crows or robins will spot the great horned owl in a tree. Could be a juvenile, could be an adult, doesn't matter. And they go, oh, no, not today. So they start calling, and they bring in their friends from as far away as they can hear them. I mean, you'll get multiple groups of crows. Sometimes you'll see chickadees, titmice, all kinds of birds grouped together. If you ever hear a whole bunch of birds sounding really upset, go investigate, because chances are you're going to find a snake, an owl, a hawk, something cool. So basically, they just do their best to annoy the living snot out of that owl to where it finally goes, oh my gosh, forget it. Like, I'm finding another perch. This is so not worth it. And that's generally what happens. So it gets to the point where they literally chase the owl away. They don't usually ride it, but they chase it away. And again, they might come back to that spot tomorrow once those birds disperse, or they may just, decide to hunt in another area. But again, those guys are looking out for their own, just like the owl's looking out for theirs. Really cool bird behavior. Okay, so this is the bird that haunts my dreams. For those of you that are bird watchers, you have what you call your nemesis bird. This is my nemesis bird. And that's because I haven't seen it yet. A whole lot of my friends have, and it's not fair. We'll get into that in a little bit, why I didn't get to see them, because they have occurred in North Carolina pretty recently, and there's an interesting reason for that. So we have a male and a female here. Does anybody want to guess who's who? I'll give you a hint. Look at the looks on their faces. All the men are like, oh, I know. Yeah, so the female is the mottled one in the back looking a little perturbed. like he didn't take the trash out or something. And the male is the pure white one, so he's on the right. So again, sexually dimorphic, just like our barn owls. So this is one of the few times where you can really impress your friends and go, oh, that's not just a snowy owl, that's a female snowy owl. They're like, whoa, how did you know? So again, these guys are living in circumpolar areas, so snow and ice, that's why they're white. In addition to their coloration, you'll notice they have really awesome, super fuzzy feet. So they have extra feathers all over their legs, toes, face, and that's because when you stand out on the Arctic tundra in the wind, you kind of want as much insulation as humanly possible, or as owly possible, something like that. So again, kind of in line with the same size as our barred and great horned, between a crow and a goose, slightly larger than the great horned, but again, they kind of need a little bit of extra bulk, sort of like when we put on extra layers for wintertime, same kind of idea. They will actually nest straight on the ground, so the female just sort of makes a little scrape, kind of like a lot of our shorebirds, and just lays on the eggs, which has got to be pretty brutal when you live in that environment. These guys also have kind of a cool mating technique as well, which is probably the coolest mating technique I've ever heard of from a bird. They do this little routine where the male will go find food, usually a lemming, because that's their number one favorite food, lemmings. He'll grab a lemming, and the female will be hanging out somewhere minding her own business, and he'll fly up. He'll kind of raise himself up into the air and hover with the lemming like, look, I brought you food. And then he slowly descends, drops the lemming at her feet, and bows. No joke. Like puts his head down, tail out, ta-da! Yeah. Guys, you need to step up your game. All right, so here's our snowy owl habitat. So as I mentioned, very different from another map we looked at earlier for the barn owl. So they're covering all those circumpolar regions. Again, only going to be found in big open areas. So they're used to kind of savanna type areas, but tundra-like. So you can actually find them at places like airports. When they have come down to North Carolina, they're found out at the coast, so out on the beach, because they need these wide expanses. They're not going to sit up in trees and look for little things running around in the woods. They need to be able to see for a really long way to hunt effectively. Typically, when they do nest, they're up on sort of a hill. So again, they can kind of see things coming. They don't have a whole lot of predators, but they do need to look out for things like Arctic wolves and Arctic foxes. It may not be coming for them, but it's certainly going to be interested in their eggs and their babies. Here's the North American range of the snowy owl. So you'll see nowhere near North Carolina. And that's, again, because they like it cold. They do migrate, so you'll notice their breeding grounds are way, way up there. Then they sort of have their year-round area where it's cold enough to breed and be there year-round. And then they might move down into Canada and the extreme North US. But every so often, this magical thing happens called an eruption. Not ER, IRR. Totally different. Although I think it'd be kind of cool if we had an eruption of owls, but it might get messy. So an eruption is sort of a very unusual migration where for some reason, most of the time it's because food is scarce in their normal wintering grounds, the birds sort of get pushed further and further away in search of food. It might also be competition for territory. So if so many owls are breeding in an area and they're sort of pushing each other out, they might kind of wander down. So this usually happens maybe every 4 or 5 years. Again, with lemmings being their number one food, it's cyclical with their breeding. So every 4 or 5 years, there's sort of a lemming shortage. Don't know why. Don't know a lot about lemmings. And so that actually happened back in 2013 and 14, and then again in like 2017, 2018. Now in 2013 and 14 is what we call a mega eruption. This is the one that haunts my dreams, because this happens once every century or so, or certainly once in a lifetime, so I missed my shot. This is when we had 15 snowy owls in different areas around North Carolina. That picture you see there is actually the owl that was out at the Outer Banks, so that is a friend of mine who took that picture. I'm really still irritated that I didn't get to go see that owl. I have this job, and they make me go all the time, and I can't just leave and go, I need to find a snowy owl. Can I have the day off? It didn't work. A lot of other people got to see it. And again, birders, we get really Twitter-pated when like something comes up on the rare bird alert. Oh my gosh, like it's not supposed to be here and it's here and we have to go see it. So you see birders get really excited. So I think a whole lot of people saw that snowy owl out at the Outer Banks. So again, we'll be due for one, three or so years from now, maybe 2. So I still have a shot. And there is this great website that people like me can stalk called Project Snowstorm. And it's folks that are doing research about snowy owls because so little is known about them. Their migration patterns are very odd. They're still trying to figure out a lot of things about that. And of course, to help them with conservation as well. So you can actually go to Project Snowstorm and they name their owls and you can track where it's been seen. So, if one like shows up in New Jersey, I go, could I go to New Jersey and back in the weekend? I could probably do that. So, yeah. If you really want to see a snowy owl, there are ways that you can do it. There is help out there. All right, here's their food. Again, definitely more of a specialist because, again, limited environment. You're not going to have a whole lot of animals excited to live in the tundra. So the lemming, front and center, #1 food choice. They also like ptarmigans, ducks, geese, any kind of wading birds, and then snowshoe hares. Again, mentioned they nest on the ground, lazy owls. But again, rises, and it's smart. It might be windy, but at least she's not going to be covered in snow and ice by the time the chicks hatch. So she's got that going for her. And of course, the male is busy bringing her food. They have to constantly monitor the chicks because, again, they are out in the open, completely on their own. So someone's usually standing guard while the other parent searches for food. All right, I think I'm running out of time, but I wanted to quickly mention my particular favorite owl, because he's super cute and deadly, is the northern saw-whet owl. This is another one. We're not likely to see it in this part of North Carolina, but they do breed along the Blue Ridge Parkway. So as I mentioned, there are some owls you can see on vacation. So if you want to take a vacation to the mountains, you can target bird the northern saw-whet owl. They are typically found more in the northeast, down to the mid-Atlantic, throughout the northern part of the U.S. So I saw my lifer northern saw-whet owl in my home state of Connecticut. I've yet to see or hear one here in North Carolina, but there are records kind of across the state. So every once in a while, one shows up in the Piedmont, sometimes even out at the coast. But for the most part, you're going to see them in the mountains. Very similar in size to the screech owl. So these are little baby owls. Super cute. And with that, I think I'm done.
Thank you very much. Let's give Colleen a round of applause. And yes, let's take questions. If you've got a question, if you're down here on the first floor, wave at me. I'll bring you a microphone. That way everyone in the room can hear. If you're on the second or third floors, you can ask questions too. Just wave down at me, then yell at me, and we'll use our microphones and repeat the questions. But I see hands going up. We'll get started.
Thank you. What time of year do these owls nest and have their babies in this state?
Good question. Yeah, so it definitely depends on where they're located. For the most part, it's going to be late winter, early spring. And they actually tend to nest a little earlier than other raptors, and folks think it's to kind of set up their territories even sooner, so the babies sort of have a jump start on territories and food. Mm-hmm.
So now?
Yes, yeah. And again, so like, for example, I think either the great horned or the barred, they're very vocal, and they'll actually start kind of mating calling each other in November, December, sort of peaks in December, January, and then they'll be breeding shortly after that.
This is more of a kind of a comment on your saw-whet owl. I just finished up working out at the Outer Banks, and I was consistently hearing that there's a pretty good chance of seeing saw-whet down at Body Island. So
yes.
You want to go search for them there.
I have heard about that particular owl, so yeah, that's what I've heard. I have yet to catch it, but I know other people that I've seen and heard it out there. See, you got to get on the Birder Network. People know these things.
I have a question.
Sure.
Owls come out at night, so if I want to see one, how do I do this?
So, like I said, the barred is your best bet because they'll actually be out during the day quite a bit. They day roost. And when I worked at Ena River State Park, we had a couple that reliably at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you could walk down the trail and go, barred owl. So even though technically they stay nocturnal and hunt at night most of the time, but they can be daytime hunters. But the barred tends to have that more than anyone else. And then again, usually it's just luck of the draw, you're hearing it. So I just try to stick to areas where you've got woods. Go camping a lot. Visit your state parks.
Second floor, yell down at us.
Okay. I live in Cary in a 30-year-old neighborhood,
Mm-hmm.
and we've got an owl, and it seems to sound off around 4:30 in the afternoon and 2 in the morning. And it didn't quite match the sounds you had. It does 2 hoots, about a half a second delay, and then it does 1 hoot and then a trill. Do you have any idea what that's a great horn?
Yeah, right? Yeah. Hoot like an owl.
I should take a microphone up there so we can imitate
Yeah.
this mystery owl.
Yeah, that's a good question. And that's the thing. Unfortunately, even though I played a bunch of sounds, there's a lot of variation. And again, they might have some of those stunted calls where they're not quite doing the who's awake, me too, or who cooks for you. They're whoo, whoo. So yeah, it's really tough. And I'm not that good of an earbirder that I could say, oh, the tone, if it's this, you know. So my advice would be to go to a site like All About Birds where they have a bunch of different sounds and calls for each one and kind of go through them all, because sometimes they'll have those little abbreviated calls. You might be able to match it up. My guess is it's probably a barred owl, but that's just a complete guess, to be honest. Yeah, so go to All About Birds. Yeah, they've got a lot of different recordings for some of those species, and usually that helps a little bit. Right. Right. Yeah, that's a good question. So he asked about success rates when they're going after a rodent, and if there's any statistics on that. That's a great question. From what I read, they actually seem to have a pretty high success rate. And I think because of the fact they've got the excellent night vision, they've got that stealth factor going for them. A lot of things just aren't a match for them. Because again, even if it's like a mouse or something much faster than them, it's not like a hawk where they can hear it coming. So usually, like they say, by the time they get hit by the owl, that's their first, oh, there's an owl. You know, it's too late. So I think it's pretty high. Yeah, thank you.
Let's give Colleen one more round of applause.
Thank you all for coming.
Thank you. Thank all of you for being patient with us. I hope that you enjoyed the show. We'll be back here again. Check out naturalsciences.org for upcoming events. Bye, everybody.
Don't forget to watch the video.